Hey everyone, so it's Hearth and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we are continuing the Elemental Magic series and we're going to be talking about the air element. Now, of all of the elements, the air element is probably the least used of all of them. A lot of people don't know how to use it. It's considerably more unusual and slightly trickier to use than the other elements. It's less obvious. You know, the fire element has fire. The water element has water. They're all things that you can touch and work with physically. The air element for a lot of people seems a little intangible, despite the fact that we are permanently surrounded by the stuff. If anything, the air element is probably the most abundant element of all of them, and yet it's the one that people often work with the least. So today I wanted to go through some of the correspondences of the air element and also just a few of the different techniques for how you can work with it. So let's start off like I have with all of the others, with the colour correspondence. Now the air element is slightly unusual in its colour correspondence, largely because blue was already taken by the water element. So a lot of people will work with yellow for the air element. But there are also others that work with pastel blue for the air element, as well as grey and white. There's a really good variety of colours that maybe are slightly unusual. It seems a little like the air element got last dibs, but a lot of people do work with yellow and it does make it considerably different from the other elements, so there's definite distinction. But if you would rather work with blue, you can always work with darker blue for the water element and pastel blue for the air element, more of a sky blue type colour, for instance. So there are definite options there, and you can also tailor the colours that you work with to the type of outcome you're wanting to manifest. So for instance, if you want it to be a very positive, uplifting outcome, you can always use yellow. If you want it to be quite a calm and peaceful outcome, you can always use blue. If you want it to be quite stormy and powerful and strong, you can always use a grey, like storm clouds. So it does give you quite a lot of variety. Now you can use these colours in lots of different ways. Some people will use them as altar cloths, others will use them in candles or in sachet works or in petitions. There's really a lot of different options there. Other people will simply use the colour to represent the element on an altar or in a working in particular. So next we have the zodiacs, or the astrological signs of the air element. Now one of the most commonly asked questions that I get is, can I work with an element if I don't belong to that star sign? And I want to say, yes, you definitely can. Although it might be easier for people that belong to these zodiac or astrological signs in order to work with that particular element, you definitely don't have to belong to that particular element or that particular zodiac sign in order to work with them. So the air element zodiac signs are Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. Now it's important to note that we are made up by more than just our sun sign, and that's what these zodiac signs and elemental associations are based on. It was based on the position of the sun in relation to the different astrological houses at the time of your birth. Now our astrology is based on far more than just our sun sign, so you can certainly work with this element if you don't belong to a sign that's part of the air element. Now these can be worked with in many different ways. Yes, you might be more connected to an element and you might want to work with it more if you belong to one of its astrological signs, but you can use it in many different ways. A lot of people will choose to work with that particular element when the sun re-enters that sign. So if you do want to work with the air element alongside these astrological signs, you might choose to work with the air element when the sun is entering the season of Aquarius, which is January-ish time. Now the sun enters into one of these astrological phases for approximately about a month and a little bit. So you really have a good space of time that you can work with it. So for instance, if you wanted to work with the air element, you could do it at some point in January when it's Aquarius season. If you wanted to work with a water element, you could do it in February when it is Pisces season, or July when it's Cancer season. If you want to work with a fire element, you can do it during August when it's Leo season. There really is a big window of time that you can do it in, and you can almost map the year out so that you can plan all of your elemental workings based on these astrological signs. Now the other way of doing it, and one that a lot of people do, is work with the moon phases in relation to these particular astrological signs. So typically a moon moon will spend about 3 to 4 days in each sign. So you might often see posts, especially on social media, saying it's now the new moon in Taurus or it's the full moon in Scorpio. What this means is that the moon in its particular phase is entering into an astrological sign, and it's a really powerful time to work with that energy. So for instance, if you did want to work with cleansing energy in relation to the air element, you could choose a new moon in Aquarius. That gets the air element energy as well as the new moon energy, and you can time all of your workings to work with these astrological and lunar phases. It essentially allows you to plan out your entire year based on which phase of the moon is going to be in which different astrological sign as you go through the year. And these are all pre-planned. You can find whole sheets of them on the internet if you wanted to, based on your specific location, so you know exactly what time of the year it's best to do what particular workings. Now, of course, this isn't a requirement, but it is a good option if you do like working with astrology and you also like working with lunar phases or cosmic bodies. It is a really nice addition to your magical practice. It's all about adding those layers up. Everything in this list can be used alone, or it can be used alongside other techniques to really build up these levels of association. So next we have crystals. Now there are a good few different crystals associated with the air element. A lot of the time it is because of their clarity and their clearness. Now there is one that is connected to all of the elements, and that is quartz. So once again, if all you have is quartz, you can work with it when it comes to the air element, as quartz is wonderful to program for almost any energy. So you can program it to work with the fire element, the water element, the earth element, or the air element based on the energy that they resonate at. So it's a really good crystal to work with for all of the elements. But specifically for the air element, you do have quite a few. Amethyst, aventurine, azurite, beryl, blue chalcedony, celestite, fuchsite, holy stones, which are also known as hagstones. They're also connected to the water element, but a lot connected to the air element as well. Jade, malachite, mica, muscovite, jasper, rhodonite, quartz in all forms, topaz and tourmaline. So there's definitely a lot of options there. Some of them are definitely more viable than others, such as the quartzes. They're very, very affordable. Same with mica, it's relatively affordable to find, especially in sheets that you can work with. Now these crystals can be added into bigger workings, they can be used as focal points on elemental meditations, they can be used in candle magic and jar spells, sachet spells, witches bottles, witches balls, they can be placed on altars. There are so many different things that you can use them for. So you can definitely use them alone when connecting with the energy during meditations or trance work, but you can also use it when working with other things as well. So next we have metals. Now I've spoken about metals in regards to all of the elements so far, for a few different reasons. A lot of people connect more with metal than they do with stones and crystals, and also a lot of people choose to enchant their metal items and their metal jewellery. So when it comes to the air element, the metals that are associated with it are copper and tin. Now copper, for many people, is associated to all of the elements, but as far as I'm concerned, for me personally, it's connected to the water element, a little bit of the earth element, but then all metals are connected to the earth element for me, and also the air element. Now this really all depends on your personal connection. It's always best when it comes to these associations to go with your gut instinct. If something isn't on this list, or you think it needs to go in a different category, then that's completely fine. You do you when it comes to your magical practice. It's all about what you connect that item, that herb, that crystal, that metal with that's most important. But if you do want to enchant your jewellery based on metals, that's definitely something you can do. I personally do that quite a lot. Most of my jewellery is silver, so I tend to work with the water element when it comes to enchanting my jewellery. Other people will change how they enchant their jewellery based on the particular elemental metal that it's made up of. So sometimes they'll use the earth element to enchant, sometimes the water element. It all depends on the metal that they're working with. So if you do want to do this, it's definitely a really good option. And especially when it comes to the air element, it's quite unusual to find people enchanting their jewellery based on the air element. And sadly, it's actually kind of unusual to find anyone working with the air element. It's kind of unfortunate. Not many people work with it, and I think they really, really should. So next we have the planets. Now this is ideal if you do want to work with that cosmic energy. There are a few for the air element, but when it comes to the air element, you really can pick any planet that is made of gas. There are a lot of them in our solar system alone, but a few that are particularly good to work with are Venus, Jupiter, and Mercury. Now, some of them are on there because they are gas giants. Other ones are on there because they very closely connect to the associations of the air element, such as Mercury, for instance. Mercury is very closely connected to communication. That is why people freak out so much when it's the Mercury retrograde, because they feel as though they can't talk properly, or they put their foot in their mouth in very important situations. And because Mercury is very closely connected with communication, and so is the air element, they're all linked together. So hopefully you can kind of see how everything is connected together, and you can really draw on multiple different associations for a singular elemental working or a singular practice, and it really adds these extra layers of intention one on top of another. So next we have herbs. Now, there are quite a lot of herbs connected with the air element, but one of the main things that's associated with it are petals and flowers. So things like blossom and any really flowering plant can be used to work with the air element. You can also use the same plant and have multiple different aspects relating to different things. So for instance, the roots are very connected with the earth element, the petals are very closely connected with the air element. And because of this, you can really use a singular plant, for instance, like a rose, and you can use multiple different aspects of that plant to represent different elements rather than using a huge collection of different herbs. So there are others that do directly connect with the air element, and they are agrimony, acacia, almond, anise, bergamot, bluebell, all citrus fruits, so lemon, lime, grapefruit, orange, all of those really connect with the air element, as well as dandelion, eyebright, fennel, frankincense, goldenrod, benzoin, gum arabic, hazel, lavender, lemon verbena, lemongrass, mace, marjoram, mastic gum, mint, mistletoe, myrrh, oregano, parsley, peppermint, pine, primrose, sweet pea, vervain, wormwood, and yarrow. So that is quite a list. There's quite a lot going on there, and there's so much you can do with them as well. So a lot of the resins are connected with the air element, so things like gum arabic, frankincense, myrrh, benzoin. There's so many in there, and because of that, it's really great when you're working with the air element to work with incense. So making your own incense is a wonderful thing that you can do to work with the air element. It's a way of representing it in ceremonial circles, ceremonial spaces, on altars as offerings. It's also just a really nice way to work with it, and you can blend your own incense to match your magical intention. So if you want to represent the air element, picking things out of this list can be really, really good. Just please be careful. Some of these are poisonous, some of these are toxic. I do not want anyone to hurt themselves, so please make sure you always do your research before you use any herb for any purpose. But there's a lot in here that you can make really beautiful incenses out of. Now, when it comes to the air element, one of the easiest ways to work with it is through incense. And you can actually blend your own incenses, or you can get your own incenses that connect to different associations and intentions, such as prosperity, love, protection, road opener, blockbuster, cleansing. All of these things you can find incenses in. And you can make your own and really resonate and connect with the air element and call upon the air element in your particular workings by using incense as a representation of the air element. Now, next we have animals. Now, this is particularly good for those that like working with animals within their magical practice and within their spirituality. They might often do trance work with animals, or see animals a lot in their dreams or in their visions. They might work with them in their oracle cards and have animal oracle cards, or work with them on altars as little figures and icons and drawings. So the air element animals are mostly those that fly. You can kind of see where this is going, can't you? So it's a lot of the winged insects, things like bees and butterflies, moths. It's also things like birds and bats. So basically anything that flies, anything that has the ability to rise itself into the air is often good for working with the air element. Now, there are far too many to list off because almost every single bird species can be used to work with the air element, and also every single flying insect. Also, spiders are oddly also connected to the air element as well, even though they don't necessarily, fly. Like all of the others in this list, they are also connected to the air element as well. So this can be used on altars. You can add their energy and their symbolism into altars, into workings that you're doing, into meditations that you're doing. There really is a lot of options with that as well. There aren't so many I can list off because I would probably be here all evening if I was to attempt to list off every single bird and every single flying insect in the world. So next we move on to spirits. Now when it comes to spirits, you have the elemental spirit, which are sylphs, and then you also have several varieties of air-based fae, and also angels. Now a lot of people do choose to work with angels, even if they don't follow one of the Christian faiths. They may choose to work with angels in their magical practice, and the air element is the perfect place for angels and their angelic energies. So if you do want to work with angels, and if you do work with angels, you're probably connecting more to the air element than you even realized you were, and it's definitely something that you can look into adding into your workings, adding into your communications even more if you do work with any of these already. Now, when it comes to working with spirits, as I've said many a time, it's always important that you give a spirit what it is owed. Oftentimes, spirits will work with you in return for an offering, a gift, or something in return. And if you've agreed to do this, please make sure you actually do it. Spirits deserve a fair wage, and because of that, we should always give them what they've asked for if we have agreed to it. That way, they might help you and they won't smite you quite so easily. It's always important to leave your offerings. Always, whether that be deities, whether that be spirits, whether that be ancestors, if they have asked for something or you have offered something, please make sure you do it. And also always be careful when it comes to spirits. But it is something that you can do if you aren't necessarily wanting to work with the physical aspects of the air element, but you are very interested in conjuring or spirit work and spirit communication. The air element spirits are another collection of really wonderful spirits that you can work with and cover a huge range of different varieties. There are far too many air element fae or air-based fae that I can list off in this video. There's just too many of them. As with all of the elements, there are different spirits that connect to it. So if you're really interested in it, make sure you do a lot of research. Dive in, see what you can find, because there are so many spirits that you can work with if you do want to add that into your practice. So what does all this mean? What does the air element connect to? What kind of workings can you do with it? So the air element is very much about the higher self. So a lot of it is about travel, whether that is physical travel to grow yourself as a person, or astral and spiritual travel and journeying, astral projection, those kind of things. It's also really closely connected to divination and foresight, and that's one of the reasons why holy stones are very closely connected to the air element. The idea of holy stones or hag stones is that by looking through them or by holding them and owning them, you own a piece of the in-between, and if you look through that, you may be able to see spirits and see things that someone normal wouldn't be able to see. It's all about foresight, intellect, divination, psychic intuition, and psychic ability. But it's also about wisdom, knowledge, study, and communication as well. So there really is a lot with the air element. Now, how do you actually work with the air element? A lot of people love the idea of working with the air element. They love everything that goes behind it. They love everything that they can connect with, but they're not sure what to do. And agreed, it is a little bit less tangible than the other elements. Whereas we can scoop up a little cup of water, or we can touch the earth and we can light a fire. Air is ever present, and yet most of the time we never see it. We can see it when it's in association with other things. So we can see it in regards to smoke when we are burning something. You can see it in clouds when it's associated with water. But a lot of the time by itself, the air element is ever there and not very tangible for most people. So when it comes to the air element, it's really all about getting creative. Now, one of the main ways that I personally like to work with the air element is through my nose. Now, one of the senses that is mostly connected to the air element is the sense of smell, and so use it. If you have the ability to smell, make the most of it in your magical practice. Incense is a wonderful way of doing this, but it doesn't have to just be incense. It could be going out into a very floral location, or smelling active plants, or going out into nature, or going out after a thunderstorm, and that scent in the air of that rain and that energy that's in the air that you can really smell, and it smells amazing. Does anyone else love the smell of a good rainstorm? Anyone? I know I do. I love going outside when it's raining. That nice fresh scent. All these things are connected with the air element, even if maybe you didn't realize it. If you use incense in your magical practice, you can tailor the particular incense that you're using to associate with what you want to manifest. So if you know you want to manifest love, maybe use a rose incense that you can smell during that working. You're adding that intention, that association into the working, as well as connecting with the air element. You can do this in sticks, in cones, in powders, or in loose incense that you make yourself or buy in. And it's something that really closely connects with the air element. It allows us to see it as a physical thing. When it comes to the air element, it's quite unusual because you almost have to combine multiple elements in order to be able to physically witness the air element for yourself. So when it comes to incense, you are both getting the energy of fire and of earth, because you are using herbs of the earth and also working with heat, but you are then able to visibly see the smoke, which is connected to the air element. So you can really combine all of the elements together, or when you're doing this, you can just hone in and just work with the air element in your magical practices. Now this can be done with scented candles, this can be done with oil diffusers, this can be done in your kitchen magic. Being able to smell that food that you are creating is a way of working with the air element, even if you might not realize it at the time. A lot of us tend to take our sense of smell for granted until it's gone. So it's really good that you make the most of it in your day-to-day life and also in your magical practice as well. So whether that is using little potpourri bags to manifest your workings as you're smelling it, so all of the items in there are very strongly scented and they're all associated with your intention, whether that is using dream pillows with mugwort and hops and lavender and chamomile to help you sleep but also bring you prophetic dreams, whether that is using it in your incense, whether that be loose incense or cone incense, that could be changing location to work with different elements and different energies wherever you go. So the scent of the ocean, you can really work with that for your cleansing and rejuvenating workings. If you go into a woodland, that scent of the earth and the dirt and the plants can be really good for that nurturing, healing energy. Work with your sense of smell if you have the ability to, as it's a really great way of connecting with the air element. So another way that you can work with the air element is to cleanse. So wind is particularly good for this. You can use it to physically cleanse yourself if you wanted to. So you can go outside on a windy day and you can envision all of that excess energy, all of that negativity being blown off you by the wind. You can also energize items with the energy of the wind. By pushing your intention into it as the wind is blowing past, it's energizing what you want to manifest into that item, into that object. It's another great way of doing it. The wind is a really, really wonderful way of working with the air element. You might not be able to see it physically, but you can see how it interacts with everything else. And it's just another layer of things you can add on. So for instance, you can use petitions. You can also use sigils. So a lot of people will use sigils by destroying them, whether that's setting them on fire or burying them, whatever it might be. Now, one thing you can do with the air element is use items that are 1, safe, 2, biodegradable, and you can then allow the wind to take them away. It's really good for cleansing or energizing, depending on how you want to work with it. If you're using leaves, for instance, you might want to press into that leaf with a toothpick, a sigil, and then you can let the wind blow it away with your intention, with your energy, whether you want that to get rid of it or whether you want to manifest it. It is a really interesting way of working with the air element, and it's just it's very refreshing, especially if you want to get rid of things from your life. If you want them to just be blown out, then that can be a really interesting way of doing it. Now, when it comes to the air element, it can be a little difficult to represent in circle casting. So if you're doing a ceremonial circle casting or you're planning on calling in the quarters, it can be a little tricky to know how to represent the air element, but there are a few different ways of doing it. a lot of people will work with feathers when it comes to the air element. Not only are they associated with angels, one of the spiritual beings, but they're also connected to flying creatures of all kinds. So it's really good to use feathers. If you find a feather, you can use it to represent the air element in your workings, but you can also work with candles. So a lot of people will have an individual colored candle to represent the different elements, and they might carve symbols into them. They might dress them with oil that's been made from the herbs that are connected to the element. They might be loaded with herbs that are connected with the element as well. Now, if you do want to carve anything into the candle, you can always use the alchemical symbol of the air element, which I will put here-ish. Now you can put this on petitions, you can simply display it on an altar, you can carve it into candles, you can add it into spell work and rituals. There are so many different things that you can do with it, and almost anything else in this list. You can make witches' balls, witches' bottles, sachets, candle spells, whatever it is that you might want, with the different herbs and items that relate to the element. So you can do a witch's ball with feathers in it and herbs that relate to the air element, and you can hang it outside to get the energy of the air element to assist in manifesting your desired outcome. You can use wind chimes that have carved on them or drawn on them things that you want to manifest in your life, and as the wind blows through them, you can get it to manifest your desired intention simply with the energy of the air element. If you do want to set up an altar for the air element, you can have a yellow or pale blue or white or grey altar cloth. You can then have items on it that represent the air element, whether that be even just an empty jar. It could be quite a comical way to represent the air element because you know there's air in it, but you just can't see it. Or you can use animal symbolism, so animal cards, animal pictures, little kids' toys. You can have the crystals of the element, dishes that contain incense that you're burning as offerings. You can use the sigils and the symbols and the items and the feathers to represent the element in that altar. You can do this if you only want to work internally. You can almost set up a miniature altar in your own mind if you don't want to have one physically, or you can visualize a specific color or an item or a scent if you want to work with the air element. It's a really great way to kind of add into your visualizations if you do item-free magic. Now you can use herbs and burn them as a way of working with the air element as well. Now, a lot of people will immediately think of smoke bundles. And yes, you can definitely use smoke bundles to work with the air element. It is a form of air element cleansing as well as fire element cleansing. It's kind of a two-in-one deal going on here. So a lot of people will work with sage or they'll work with Palo Santo, preferably sustainably sourced people. Yes? Yes? Cool. But a lot of people will work with that for their cleansing purposes. Remember, top to bottom, back to front, out the front door, same as always. But smoke bundles don't always have to be associated with cleansing. That is what most people will connect them with, but smoke bundles can really do so much more. And when it comes to the air element, they are so versatile. Herbs can be programmed to match your intention. Before you use a herb, it's always best to really tell it what you want it to manifest, because they usually have a large range of different associations and they are not going to know what to do unless you tell them to do it. And when it comes to smoke bundles, the same applies. Yes, they can be used to cleanse, and a lot of people will use smoke bundles solely to cleanse, but they don't have to be. You can use bundles of different herbs to manifest different things into your life. So if you use a rosemary bundle, you can use it to bring concentration, study, focus, knowledge, wisdom, intellect into your life. A lot of people will use it in offices to help bring that concentration into that space. A lot of people will use yerba santa for healing. Often they'll use it for cleansing, but added onto that, it's all about that healing, that positive, that uplifting energy. It's getting rid of the old and bringing in the new healthy energy. So a lot of people will use it in healing workings. You can also burn sweetgrass for its uplifting positive energy, and people will burn mugwort for instilling psychic dreams, psychic intuition, and underlying knowledge and intuition that they didn't realize that they had. Smoke bundles are really, really interesting, and they are for far more than just cleansing. I can promise you, they do so much more. So if you do like smoke bundles and you like working with them, See if you can find some that come in different varieties that you can work with for different properties. So things like dragon's blood bundles are often used for both protection and cleansing. So they're twofold. They cleanse and then they protect. You often get white sage and sweetgrass, which are used to cleanse and then bring in positive energy. You can really do multifaceted workings. When it comes to herbal bundles, they aren't just for cleansing. And if you do enjoy working with them, it's really good trying to adapt them. See if you can get some mugwort going on if you do want some psychic dreams. Now, of course, always be careful when it comes to using smoke. Please be careful around children and pets. Many pets are susceptible to smoke inhalation, so any birds, any small rodents, even your cat and dog can be very susceptible to it. So please always make sure that they are safely out of the way when you're going to be doing this. And also, children, very notorious for being hazardous around anything that's hot, and also it can irritate their lungs as well. And always be careful if you do have breathing conditions. Make sure you are in a well ventilated space so you don't hurt yourself, but otherwise have a good time with it. Make sure you're safe, but you can really amplify your workings by adding in a bunch of different methods. And if you've never worked with bundles of herbs and burning them, it could be a really good way of working with the air element in a way that you maybe haven't before. And if you do want to cleanse but don't want to cleanse with smoke, another way that you can do it is with Himalayan salt. Now, of course, salt, depending on where it comes from, does come from the water element or the earth element. But some people will work with different salts to represent the different elements. This is something that I used to do when I used to call in the quarters of outdoor circles. I would have small jars, like little tiny bottles of different salts. So I would have fire salt in one to represent the fire element. I am going to be doing a video soon on how to make fire salt if you're interested in that, so please stick around if you are. You can use sea salt to work with the water element, rock salt to work with the earth element, and also Himalayan salt to work with the air element. So it's a way of cleansing, and it's also a way of representing the element in circle casting and also on altars. But please be careful, don't ever put salt directly on the earth. You will kill it. It's not a good idea. So please keep it sealed in the little jars or in your little containers. And then the last really interesting way that you can work with the air element is actually through your own breath. Now, when it comes to spellwork and ritual, a lot of workings will call for breathing life into something. Breath is a really important thing. Not only is it something that keeps all of us alive, it's something that can save people's lives by giving a breath. And it's something that other items can benefit from, especially spiritual items. So if you believe in animist traditions, that you then believe that everything has a spirit, everything has an energy. And this also can apply into witchcraft as well. I personally often breathe life into spell bottles, into sachet workings, into witches' balls. I tend to breathe life into a lot of things, whether that be my runes when I'm energizing them. I'll often breathe my intention, my question into them. I do it with cards as well. I do it with pendulums. Most divination I will do this with, as well as a lot of my spiritual items. I will literally breathe life into them, breathe my energy and my intention into them with that breath. And that's a really interesting thing that I think a lot of people look over. A lot of the time, if you're doing knot magic, you breathe through the knot as you're closing it to seal that energy into that knot. And then when you want to manifest it, you can always release it again and it will release that energy. There's so many very traditional techniques that work with breath that a lot of us kind of look over. Now it's very much items, it's things that are tangible. Whereas a breath, it's so significant, it's so powerful, it brings life. And so we can work with that in our magical practice. If you want to add a little bit of you into that working, if you want to really breathe your energy into it, it's definitely something you can do with almost all workings. In fact, I'd go as far as to say most workings you can do that with. Candle spells you can do that with. You can do it with sachets and with jars and knot magic, and there's so many different things. And it's just a really simple, easy and effective way of working with the air element, even if you're just inside. So even if you can't go outside to do your workings, that is something that you can definitely do from inside. So I hope you guys enjoy this video on the air element. It's kind of the last of the main Western elements that I'm going to be talking about in this series. But don't worry, I'll probably be doing more videos on this topic soon if it's something that you're interested in. If you do want to see the other videos in this series, feel free to click the link down in the description box. I have a playlist that goes through all of my elemental videos if that is something you are interested in. So if you did enjoy this video, feel free to give it a like. It really means so much to me. If you do have any questions, comments, concerns, video ideas, or just want to chit chat with the community down in the comment section, feel free to post a comment. I would love to know if you work with the air element, and if you do, how do you choose to work with it? So many people overlook it. It's a very overlooked element, and I definitely don't think it should be. So feel free to give each other ideas down in the comment section. Let's have a big chat about the air element because it's way too overlooked. Also, if you do want to speak about a bunch of topics regarding witchcraft, feel free to join the Discord server. The link is down in the description box. We've got a lovely little community of people that chat basically 24/7 all about witchcraft. So if you do want to have a chat, have a natter with other people in the community, feel free to check out the link down there for the Discord server. And a massive thank you to all of my Patreons. You guys are absolutely amazing. Your names will be on the end screen in just a moment. If you did enjoy the magical content on this channel or in this video, feel free to hit subscribe. I do try my best to post magical content every Wednesday and every Saturday at 6 p.m. And so I hope you have a marvelous magical day. I hope you are all staying safe, and I will see you in the next video.